Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. As some people have already pointed out in the chat, we only have 4 more followers till we reach our next goal. And as I've said, once we hit some of these bigger goals, not 200 followers, but because I don't have time at 200 followers, but soon after, when we hit a big goal, we're going to do some community events that you all get to pick from some different options, what we'll do. But anyway, I haven't introduced myself yet. My name's Ariana. I'm the co-director of the Consent Academy, an international Seattle-based nonprofit who aim to teach about consent and all of its complexity and potential and just awesomeness and how it can be a tool for healing and getting to know yourself better and building trust. And today we're going to play some Stardew Valley and do some nerdy things and talk about some stuff. First, oh, I'm quiet. Okay. I will turn myself up. Is this better? I might be a little quiet today because I'm kind of tired. Uh, anyway, I hope everyone's doing all right today. I have been good. I have been listening to the same song basically on repeat for like the last 5 days because I can't get it out of my head. And I love this song, and I'm afraid I'm going to listen to it until I hate it. It's the song Cerise by Ghost. It's very good. Uh, yes, I'm just going to keep listening to it over and over until I probably hate it, which is okay. And then I'll come back around after a break. Anyway, it's lovely to be. No, it's not still Coconuts, Reverend Martin. Coconuts is also a really good song, and if you haven't heard Coconuts, it's fun and light and silly and sexual in the best kind of fun and light and silly way. And I definitely recommend it. It's also a very good song with like consent because it's very much like inviting you to do things. Uh, namely, put the singer's coconuts in your mouth. It's great. Anyway, how y'all doing today? I'm very excited to be here. We're going to start with not this article. That's actually going to be what we get to at the end of the first non-Stardew Valley bit. But I have a couple of memes and a couple of little things. As you can see, we are, oh, my mouse is on the wrong thing. We're on Reddit. You can look at the things I write. It's, if you go to our Reddit account, user thing, you can see the things I've been writing. They're not all great. Sometimes they're random. But anyway, I liked this meme. It's a conservative attempts at painting a picture of a horrific dystopia wind up sounding kind of nice, actually. So this is Maxime Bernier. Bernier? I don't know how this person would pronounce their name. There are a couple of different ways. Oh, Silly My Lucille, I hope you enjoy the song. I think it's a really pretty song. Like, I like Ghost, I like metal. I usually listen to metal like Amon Amarth. And I like really nerdy metal as well. I mean, Amon Amarth's pretty nerdy because its name is literally the Elvish word for Mount Doom, so it's cool. I like a lot of nerdy metal, black metal, that kind of stuff. And Ghost is kind of does a lot of different things, but I think the song is really nice because I feel like it's about seeing and respecting someone for who they really are and like connecting with them for who they are and like sort of going against the dominant narratives that would tell them that they're like bad or that they should be ashamed. Yeah, I'm sorry, Carlin. I'm talking about the song Cerise by Ghost. It's good. It's just good. Anyway, it's a good song. Check it out. If you like metal, I mean, this song isn't super metal. I would say it's more hard rock than metal. But it's still very theatrical. It's very fun. Um, oh, I'm glad it's vibing with your heart right now, Silly Mylophiel. Yeah, it's been vibing with my heart for a while, where I'm like, damn, this would have been my favorite song of all time if I heard this as a teenager slash early 20s. And it's still pretty good. It's still pretty good. Really, yeah, it's good. It's a good song. It's the kind of romance I often would like want. It's not necessarily about romance inherently, but it's like someone seeing you for who you are and like inviting you to join them, basically. It's the best way I can sum it up. Anyway, we've got this meme here. I imagine this is a picture of a city in China because it looks like Chinese designed cities. So it's very dense, nice high towers. You can definitely see, I'll click back on the window so you can see my mouse, that there's trees and parks and stuff in there. There's lots of trees over here and trees over there. Um, Sometimes these kinds of buildings are not really beautiful to look at. And you think it's a Photoshop, Krellin, yeah. It could be. It definitely could be. The focus and the buildings are not all at the same angle. But anyway, sometimes buildings aren't beautiful to look at, but that doesn't mean they're bad. Especially when they're really nice inside and they're like really well made and built to last. You can always put facades on buildings. I think that people kind of, yeah, the three towers in the front are identical. It's true. Um, but anyway, you can always put facades on. People like to really get up, like complain about things like communist era or like USSR era architecture, where there was a big effort to sort of make as much affordable and accessible housing so that everybody could actually have a place to live. And to do that, they needed to build a lot of housing very quickly. And so the housing wasn't necessarily very pretty, and they didn't necessarily have the money to go and then do beautification stuff. However, I would still rather live in a place that was like comfortable and kept me warm and was big enough and like in a walkable area that had everything I needed but didn't look beautiful than pay 2,000 plus euros a month for a tiny apartment that's not close to anything and also doesn't look nice. Right? So, anyway, you can always put facades on. Hi, Digibron. And the tweet here says it's 2040. Canada welcomes 2 million immigrants every year. Almost everyone lives in densified large cities and uses public transportation because combustion engine cars are banned and EVs, electronic vehicles, cost a fortune. No one owns much, but everyone is happy. I mean, like, this doesn't sound actually bad to me. Canada's already majority immigrant, I'm pretty sure. Or like they have one of the highest immigrant to uh, born in country citizens per capita in the world, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Um, and so they're already a pretty like diverse place. There are a lot of white Canadians, especially people whose families came there during colonialism, so like settler descended people who have a lot of feelings about how much immigration there is. And as an Indigenous person, I'm not First Nations Canadian, I'm Choctaw, I'm not an enrolled member of the Choctaw Nation or anything. I'm just one native with some thoughts. I feel like immigration's fine. Like, Indigenous sovereignty is really important. A lot of land should be returned. And yeah, anyway, immigration's good. Immigrants are just generally a net good for any country. Got some things in the chat. Let me see what people are saying. Silly Mylithil, there are a lot of cut and paste, but the text with it seems to say it's an attempted dystopic vision, so creation method isn't the point. Yeah. And then we have here Reverend Moore. It's always fun to read this stuff. Kind of points out that these people feel certain things are bad inherently, like immigration is just bad inherently. Yeah, I mean, this is a great way to sort of start to look at some of a person's ideology. And I think a good definition of an ideology is the story that we tell to help us decide what facts are and aren't important, and then how do we interpret those facts that we've decided are important. And here you can see ideological sort of assumptions. Change is bad. People not owning a lot of stuff is bad. Not having to use public transport is bad. Density is bad. Immigration is bad, and people should own a lot of stuff. And this is definitely not like a maximizing happiness sort of perspective. And I don't think that's necessarily good or bad. Like, I think that we could take a very utilitarian, positive utilitarian view, then sort of say we want to maximize everybody's happiness. And I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like there are a lot of other really important things in life beyond just happiness. Um, and I think that there are many different types of ways to be happy and many different types of happiness to experience. And I've seen a lot of people who are really focused on the idea of maximizing happiness be focused on very particular types of pleasures, often either pleasures associated with power and having power over others, directly or indirectly, even if they're not like explicitly saying that, like it's kind of also embedded in the things that they're sort of associating with happiness, or happiness being really focused on accumulation of material goods and kind of conspicuous consumption when it's its own kind of power, or very sort of a lot of pleasures that not everybody would actually get to have because, yeah, I guess a lot of it just has to do with power, I think. The ones that I don't like. There are plenty of other ones that are really good that are like about happiness, where it's more like contentment and the happiness and being able to know oneself and decide for oneself the kind of life one wants to lead. But that's kind of a semantic issue. Silly My Lithiel, you said, I don't so much love the idea of densified large cities. I'm not in love with the idea that we have to keep upping population. I wish we would find a balance that is more reasonable to the resources of the planet. The other parts of this are problematic, as you are pointing out. I don't have problems with public transport. I do have problems with maximizing happiness. I think that is quite uh, problematic. I think maximizing happiness is unhealthy and unbalanced. Yeah, I agree with Krellin. Maximizing happiness isn't inherently bad. I'm adding the word inherently. I think it, depending on how we define it, but mandating happiness is. And I would say that, like, you know, dense cities, there's good points and bad points to it, right? Like, density is not, I'm not saying that, like, we should have just like mass urbanization movements in the sense of like everybody should move to cities, and but density preserves more land and preserves more healthy land. Like, if we had like an island that was only so big, you could maybe fit like 100 houses on the island and take up all the land, or you could put everybody into an apartment building and that would take up like less than a tenth of the land. And then you would have more land to farm and to create industry. I mean, one of the issues that a lot of Europeans that I know talk about is like one of the big weaknesses of Europe is that there's almost no industry here. There's a little bit in Germany and a couple other places, but for the vast majority of it, like most of the farming and most of the industry are things done outside of Europe. So even though Europe has really developed really well, its countrysides are really emptying. A lot of towns and cities are dying. And if you ever read the book Secular Cycles by Peter Turchin, he talks a lot about how as the society is starting to collapse, um, there's mass movements towards cities because there's no jobs and there's no opportunity and there's no resources out in the countryside. Um, and this is true sort of across history. It's part of the sort of pattern of things. And there's also less employment and more underemployment or partial employment and a lot of the things we're seeing today. Don't have all the details right in front of me, so I don't want to talk too much about that one. But I do like this meme or this Twitter screenshot and the commentary on it, which is that I think that being careful with how we use the very little and very precious land that we have is important. This next one is a cute little video also from Reddit, and it says public transport is a waste of money, nobody uses it, and that is water flowing into a pool that then also feeds the water flow, which is, I don't want to use public transport, it's old, slow, and filthy. I mentioned this, I think, on the last week. Some of my partner's coworkers recently went to New York City for conferences, and they were all sort of like stunned by how dirty and kind of broken down and inefficient they found the New York City public transport. But New York City's public transport is like the best in America, basically. And one of the most developed and most comprehensive. It moves the largest number of people in the country. Um, Even I think per capita, not just like in general, because New York is a very dense city, but also sort of per capita, how many people are using the public transport. And constant privatization of these things is part of the thing that can go wrong. Lack of any kind of regulation or oversight, which then means that companies don't have to replace parts, they don't have to be beholden to the public, even though it's public transport, and things don't necessarily get replaced or cleaned or updated. And America, I think a lot of Americans don't realize how much better we really could have it. Um, and yeah, the public transport elsewhere is just really great. Okay, only two memes today. I have this idea here. We talked about previously the idea of the sense of place, and we talked a bit last week about why does Stardew Valley kind of feel like home? Why does it create this very positive feeling for so many people? And I've spent a lot of time looking at, different social media, or people who've written articles about Stardew Valley, or what people have written about it on Reddit. And people often talk about the emotions that this game gives them. Some people like it similar to they like Animal Crossing because it's like a very low stress game, and it's sort of like it's nice to wake up and the only thing I have to do is like plant tulips and pay off money to a raccoon. And I think that that's also definitely present, but Stardew Valley has a lot more like social issues sort of written into it, and a lot of sort of discussion of community sort of directly and indirectly happening in there. And I think that that leads to some of it. And so I want to I like this paper. As I've mentioned before, whenever I'm looking at any kind of like social research, like social science research or anything in like the social sphere, I really try hard to get peer-reviewed research that has been obviously published mostly in English, sometimes in French or Japanese, because those are the only languages I know. I can mostly embarrass myself in German, not quite there with German yet. But most research is published in English anyway. I try to look at things coming from different cultures and different cultural perspectives because I think that that's really important. And obviously, within any field, like within any academic field, there's going to be like standards and norms and things that become sort of their own language, and thinking, especially with like very international peer review. I do think that if Horkheimer and Adorno were writing their dialectic of enlightenment now, they would have a lot to say about academia, like modern academia. And if you don't know this book or this work, it is a critique of the mass culture industry. And the main thrust of it is that by having mass pop culture across the world that's all kind of shared, we risk limiting the diversity of thought and creativity that we'll have, because pop culture and mass culture encourages us all to think very similarly. I can't sum this work up very well in a way that doesn't just feel like kind of a farce of what they were actually saying, because it's a very complicated work, and I really recommend it. There's a lot to it. But kind of getting back to my point, I try to seek out interdisciplinary and intercultural research on any topic and get differing perspectives. In the Discord before, and we have a section on resources, and every once in a while will share something from, say, like Thailand or China, or like South Africa or something, that's on preventing workplace harassment, or writing about consent that's very, very different from even what the Consent Academy talks about, because having these different perspectives is really important. We don't want to get culturally imperialistic. We don't want to say that there's only one way to do these things. And anyway, this is a bit of a tangent. This article here uh, is called A Sense of Place Within the Landscape in Cultural Settings. It was published in 2013 in the Asia Pacific International Conference on Environmental and Behavioral Studies. And then this is all the other information about it. If you want to read it, I will put the link in the chat. And I think that I like the way they've defined a sense of place here. I found that it is more useful than what, say, things like Wikipedia had, even though a lot of the time for sort of definitions of concepts, Wikipedia can be pretty good. I found that the one on sense of place didn't really actually explain what it meant very well. And it was kind of all over the place. Anyway, so I think here that I want to go to this part here where it says, let me get to the interpretations of reviewed studies engaged to better understand how to discover people's perceptions, experience, and responses towards their surrounding based on elements that relate to their culture and norms. These components will form the skeletal framework of the study in establishing individual understanding of sense of place, a value, and uniqueness character as part of the important issue in environment behavior study. So I think there are definitely some grammatical errors that my brain kind of skipped over when I was reading it to myself, but now are more obvious when I'm reading it out loud. Anyway, therefore, sense of place plays an important aspect in cultural context by integrating user and place. Other review focused on the effects of how people feel and appreciate place and other related contributions. The definition and theory used by various authors are reviewed. So they've kind of got all of this different research here. And they're looking at what it is to have a sense of place here. And here is where it gets really useful. In this definition, knowing the place is recognizing how people use different places to fulfill the practical needs of living, is one of the building blocks on which a distinctive sense of place can be enhanced in the urban landscape. So there's this idea here of like how people can interact with a space to fulfill their different practical needs is sort of the first building block to creating a sense of place for people where you actually feel connected to the environment around you. If you're living in a place where you can't actually meet your basic needs, it's going to feel very hard to feel integrated into this place. It's going to feel very difficult to sort of connect with it and also then connect with other people. If you're constantly needing to sort of look for other resources and other tools, it becomes hard to sort of get past the introductory stages of integrating and get into the sort of building community relationships and friendships and support networks and creative outlets and self-expression within a space. So they go on to talk about here a lot of the sense of place in relation to psychology. And they kind of talk about how it's a way of seeing and perceiving the world around you and fitting your identity into sort of like the hierarchy of identities within any given place and needing to be able to basically see yourself reflected in the landscape, know the landscape in a deep way, being able to sort of do things like notice changes over time, feel connected to the land, though not necessarily in a very literal sense, and to both feel needed and to be able to have influence on your surroundings. And they talk about it in relation to sort of spiritual dimensions and this idea of like being in places as a sort of like spiritual quality. Are you actually like really here and really present? A place that you feel connected to will facilitate a sort of mindfulness, you could call it. of being more present, being more integrated in the moment, and, you know, feeling connected to the things around you, having memories that feel anchored in the place. And one of the things that, if you read the Wikipedia, it does talk about, which I think is useful, is that the sense of place and the memories, especially childhood memories, don't have to be that you lived in the same place your whole life. There's this sort of research that says that the early landscapes that we have experience with kind of set our standards and expectations, and then we tend to evaluate new places in reference to the landscape of our childhood. Um, and that over time, though, we can adapt to new areas. But some types of landscapes, some both physical landscapes and sort of cultural and, I guess you could say, like infrastructure landscapes, would hinder this, or some would sort of facilitate it. So, do you feel connected to the place that you live? Do you feel welcomed even just by the infrastructure? Do you feel that you're given permission by the way where you live is set up to really explore and get to know the place that you're living in? And do you feel like you're able to actually see yourself in it and exert your will upon the world around you? Kind of a hard thing to quantify a lot of the time, but I do think it's something that a lot of us feel, even if we don't think about it very much. Um, Silly My Little, you say, I keep trying to apply this to places I have been and how I felt in those places. Yeah, I think that it's an interesting exercise to start to try to look at, do I feel integrated here? And what actually increases my sense of belonging beyond things just like friendships. Though we will talk about the role of city planning and infrastructure and things like loneliness, right? If I'm in a place where, there's always these feedback loops where it can start as like people were maybe cold or standoffish in an area because of one reason, and then that got reinforced by things like how the city developed or the town developed and the infrastructure there, and then the attitudes, and then it all kind of starts to reinforce each other and keep going and going and going. So we're not going to just say it is one or the other. We use a lot of the time in social sciences the image of a Mobius strip. I'll write it. I think this is how you spell it. I'm terrible at spelling. Mobius strip is sort of used, which is this sort of like twisty object where everything's sort of top and bottom at the same time. And the imagery there is supposed to be, let me just give you a picture. This will be easier. Um, so this is something, if you ever take like sociology classes or anything, they'll often have this in sort of the beginning when they're trying to talk about the difference between nature and nurture. And it's this image here of like everything is both at the same time. And you can't really sort of separate one from the other. And you can't really sort of say sort of what one is all the time. So this is definitely the idea I'm trying to bring to this conversation of how we develop spaces and how then those spaces influence culture, and then how culture influences the development of spaces, and it all kind of keeps constantly influencing and reinforcing itself and each other. It's the same thing with like mass media and advertising. Like advertising is the message and the messenger, but also the receiver of the message, where we sort of look at, I think we've talked about this before, like cycles of culture, I think in one of the past videos. I think in the ones on pornography, that's where we talked about it. If you haven't seen those, I talk about how mass media is responding to and reinforcing culture simultaneously, and like any sort of work that culture sort of produces, and the sort of cycle of that. I know I'm getting very sort of all over the place. But anyway, how we sort of feel integrated into a space. Do you feel invited by the place that you live? Do you feel that you're allowed to be there? Do you feel like you're allowed to sort of like take time to look at it, to experience it, to interact with it, to like witness where you're living? Or do you feel like I have the designated places where I belong, and I must hurry myself in between them. I'm not allowed to linger. I'm not allowed to interact. I'm not allowed to sort of take time to do these things. Um, and yes, Stitcher Braun, the MC Escher illustration with the ant walking on it helps understand that there's no up or down. Let me see if I can find that one because I think you're right. Ant. Nope. Nope, I misspelled it. uh, yeah, this one here. So you can see that it's like there is no up and down, and it's all kind of wibbly wobbly. So this article here sort of talks about a lot of things, including sort of like how does a sense of place build up, and what makes a place feel unique, not just because it looks nice. So we have things here, the sort of landscape elements and cultural context. So we have the visual to the spiritual. So buildings, landscapes, sort of like as an icon, sort of people's perceptions of the world around them, people's experiences, how people are responding to the things around them. You know, do we feel that like we're allowed to interact with things? You know, it's people often talk about green space, but if you have green space, like think about green space that's like outside of a McDonald's or like any kind of fast food restaurant that's along one of these stroads. That's green space, sure. There's like some nice grass and maybe a couple of trees, but that doesn't feel like a place where you're allowed to sit and linger. It doesn't feel like this green space is for me to interact with. It becomes, in many ways, just kind of like undifferentiated from, say, just green painted concrete because you're not actually being invited, and it often wouldn't be safe to actually interact with that space. I have some friends who live just outside of Seattle. They have a house, and they have like a backyard, and there is a little bit of green space, and they can go for walks. But there's a stroad right outside of their house, and literally last week, or maybe it wasn't last week, but very very recently, someone was hit and killed crossing the street trying to just like go to the grocery store because these stroads are, remember, they're street plus road, so it's meant to be like high flow traffic, multiple lanes, not just like one lane each way. It's usually like two or three each way to go at high speeds, sometimes up to like 55 or 60 miles per hour. There are often stoplights. There sometimes are crosswalks. Very rarely are there sidewalks. But people are also nominally supposed to be able to walk in between the places to go to the different businesses and housing and utilities like schools and stuff along a stroad, but they're incredibly dangerous. Like if you're going to get hit and killed by a car, it's most likely going to happen to you on a stroad. Like Aurora is this big road in Seattle and the road that connects to it as well. And that is where the most pedestrian car deaths happen in Seattle. And it's like the biggest stroad in Seattle. And it's rough because it's just not a safe place to be. But it's rough because there's also like bus stops along there because there is this idea of like a lot of the way the road has been or the stroad has been set up, you actually do need to walk in between places. And if you live there, because there are apartment buildings along this road and there are shops and there's sometimes sidewalk and there's sometimes like pedestrian overpass bridges and there are bus stops, but it's like terrifying to walk down it because you have people like whooshing by you at 60 plus miles an hour. They can be distracted. There's not any sort of like real division or protection. And that's not a place where you're going to find a good sense of place, right? You're not going to feel like you are invited there or welcomed there so that you can have green space that's say outside of a McDonald's, but it's very unlikely you're going to feel welcomed by the way this is set up versus a green space like a public square that is say in the middle of a mixed use district that has some housing and some buildings and maybe like, you know, a government office or a government building, and you've got this square that's a park in the middle that you can walk through it to get in between different places, and there are benches and there's shade and there's maybe a dog park and part of it. That's going to be a place where you feel really invited. So the physical environment and how we've built up the infrastructure, even if the component elements and many of it are the same, there's bus stops, there's sidewalk, there's road, there's street parking, there's businesses, there's apartments, there's even some mixed use stuff. one is going to feel like you can belong there, and one is going to feel like you don't. And so this is sort of all of these different things build on each other and affect our sense of self and our identity and our sense of place. Which brings me to the next thing I really want to talk about, which is just loneliness. So, the Campaign to End Loneliness has good research on a lot of sort of how different sorts of infrastructure affects a sense of loneliness. I think a lot of people would argue that they feel pretty chronically lonely. I know I have for most of my life felt incredibly lonely. Um, and as you probably know, there's a lot of the lonelier you are, the higher the risk is of a lot of other issues like bone density loss or cancer or diabetes or just lower life expectancy. Social belonging is incredibly important to us. But with the way we've set up the world, where we're always expected to do things like move for our job, and it's hard to feel integrated into it where you're living, and we're all dependent on cars, and cars can be a huge financial burden. And I don't just mean when gas prices go up, I also just mean like all the fees associated with it, and the maintenance, and the taxes, and the insurance, and the replacing the tires and the oil changes. Like that can be prohibitive for people. And I think that it does increase a sense of loneliness. Now, as somebody who's got a lot of like sensory issues, I can get very overstimulated very easily. So I can see the appeal of cars because when I'm in a car by myself and I'm driving, I get to control a lot more of the sort of like sensory input coming to me. I can put music on if I want, or I can turn it off. I can just have white noise coming out of my stereo if I want to, which I often would. And there are other solutions that can, like the difference between buying and paying for a car and getting some cheap noise canceling headphones and using those on public transit or wearing earplugs is pretty big. Okay, so I really recommend the research that the Campaign to End Loneliness has done. They have this research and policy hub where they look at doing interdisciplinary and intercultural research into loneliness and the factors that promote it and how to fight it, how common loneliness is, how can you measure it, and interventions. And a lot of the time, the interventions are some of the times they talk about sort of very individual solutions, um, like tailoring interventions to the needs of the people. That makes sense. Like what someone who's living in like a pseudo rural suburb is experiencing in terms of loneliness might be really different than, so who's like in their 40s and is unmarried and isn't interested in dating versus someone who's like 19 and just left home for the first time and is living on their college campus. These are going to be very different. So it does make sense. But this one's important too. Avoiding stigma and things that reinforce isolation. One of the problems is a lot of the mechanisms, even in the US, that we have for reducing loneliness are things that are really stigmatized. Things like public transport, things like public resources, going to the library, public parks, community centers. These things are often seen as, well, they're for poor people, and we stigmatize poor people. And they don't feel like, because of the cultural narratives that we have, often places where you're allowed to go and just be and experience your community, etc. So the next part is here. We have this article I mentioned this last time on the chat. Let me put this in the chat as well, so you can all. Yeah, and Silly My Lithily, you said here, even if I could afford a car, I can't drive anymore because of the exterior overstimulation. Yeah, I mean, like driving is honestly a nightmare. As someone who enjoys driving, it is. I did too much research and attention. When I lived in France, I was working in a cognitive psychology lab, and we were researching attention. And even people who don't have ADHD or any kind of neurodiversity that affects attention or any kind of brain injury or anything like that, most people's attention isn't as good as they think it is, and driving kind of terrifies me. Anyway, um, and then here I have this article that I'll also put in the chat. Um, and I'm just going to read this beginning part here because, or not that part. I think the abstract is good, but the introduction, I think, is more the part I want to read. So it's basically, the title is The Role of Community Center-Based Arts, Leisure, and Social Activities in Promoting Adult Well-Being and Healthy Lifestyles. I always am a little suspect, feel a little suspect when I hear the word healthy lifestyles, because healthy is an incredibly political and incredibly weaponized word, and not one that actually has like one concrete definition. There's so many different ways to measure health, so many different ways to evaluate health, to talk about it, to define it. It is, philosophically speaking, often referred to as like a cluster property, where you have a cluster of properties that, when in combination or found in combination, we could describe someone or something as healthy. That's contextually dependent, and what those cluster properties are can change. And yet, I would just say that healthy is a word that is often dubious. I try to be careful with it. So that's my one concern going into this article. But they're looking at sort of, do community centers reduce loneliness, improve well-being, and support quote unquote healthy lifestyles. And so here, I'll read the abstract. I'll just start with that. Sorry, I'm still very tired today. Developed countries are experiencing high levels of mental and physical illness associated with long-term health conditions, unhealthy lifestyles, and an aging population. So one of the things to note is that, like, things like disability, being not disabled is always a temporary state, because if you live long enough, you will inevitably develop some kind of disabilities. And certain things are inevitable. Certain things, we can reduce the risk. One of the most important things, that whenever we're talking about things like preventing any kind of disease, we're really often not talking about prevention, we're talking about risk reduction. Because there's a lot of things you cannot actually prevent. That you can, for example, cancer. Cancer can be caused by different bacteria and viruses. It can be caused by genetics. It can be caused by exposure to environmental toxins. It can be caused by diet. An example of this is, like, in Japan, very high rates of stomach cancer. The researchers have looked at Japanese people living in Japan eating very traditional Japanese diets, eating more Western diets, Japanese people living outside of Japan who continue to eat Japanese traditional diets, and those who eat Western diets. And what they found is, regardless of where you're living, if you're eating a very traditional Japanese diet, a lot of the risk for stomach cancer goes up tremendously, and it has to do with certain things found in fish, especially high levels of mercury and several other environmental pollutants. But it was not a genetic predisposition that the Japanese people have to developing stomach cancer. It's an environmental and lifestyle thing. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, any of this, though, like, you could then not eat a lot of fish but still develop stomach cancer, because you can get stomach cancer from things like H. pylori, a very common bacteria that most of us have in our stomachs. We're always just talking about risk reduction. That's the point I'm trying to make. All we can do is reduce risk of developing any kind of disease. Prevention is really difficult. There are very few things that actually, like, you can just truly prevent. Hi, Barontor. You're absolutely right, Salim Theo. Fish have become really good reservoirs for mercury, especially bigger fish. And I agree with you as well that I wish there were more community centers. And sometimes, as we mentioned last stream, a lot of libraries function also as community centers. I know in Seattle, that's very true. There are community centers, but the public library system's also really good for having a lot of community events and community activities and things that are just sort of accessible to everyone. Hello, Cotigo. It's so nice to see you. I bet you this is Cody. Okay, this is Cody. For anyone who doesn't know, Cody is one of my best buddies. He came to my wedding and wore a very cute cat girl outfit because I told him to dress in whatever makes him feel fabulous. And then later he was like Elmo Hugh Hefner, and it's amazing. You all should know Kotigo is cool. Cool dude. During the middle of the ceremony, I like looked back at everybody and just saw him in the back, like wearing his cat girl costume, and it was very hard to not just bust up laughing, which was exactly what I wanted at that moment. Uh, anyway, so continuing here, given the limited capacity of also, sorry, Kurtigo, to just brag about you the second you got here. I'm a big fan. Given the limited capacity of the formal health sector to address these public health issues, attention is turning to the role of agencies active in civil society. So what this is basically saying is that the current way we've set up our healthcare system, we don't really have much capacity for things like risk reduction and prevention when it comes to public health issues. It's already a very taxed system. So we can't just put all of the burden of this sort of risk reduction, because remember, prevention isn't really a thing that we can do when it comes to health. We're mostly talking risk reduction. The current medical system cannot do very much of that. They can do things like early testing and preemptive testing for things, which again is a risk reduction. Testing for if you have a disease does not prevent you from having the disease, it reduces the risk of negative impact. So again, like the medical system can't really do this. We need other social services that can provide these things. Community centers. Again, this is why the community center is the only way to actually win Stardew Valley. And this paper sought to evaluate the associations between participation in community center activities, the psychosocial well-being, and health-related behaviors. This was based on an evaluation of the Southwest Wellbeing Program involving 10 organizations delivering leisure, exercise, cooking, befriending, arts, and crafts activities. The evaluation consisted of a before and after study with 687 adults. The results showed positive changes in self-reported general health, mental health, personal and social well-being. Positive changes were associated with diet and physical activity. So again, things like diet and physical activity, we're talking that they can only ever do potentially risk reduction, like we were talking about with stomach cancer rates and traditional Japanese diets. Changing your diet can reduce the risk of developing certain things, but it's not going to be the same thing as prevention. Physical activity is often seen as like purely a net boon, but like, for example, I get recommended constantly to like just do yoga or to just work out more, but I've got a connective tissue disorder, which makes yoga not necessarily the best solution for me as my main form of physical activity. Similar to things like running. So physical activity is also not a perfect indicator of health. Remember, health is this very like nebulous word that can be very weaponized. But we're giving this paper the benefit of the doubt. Some activities were different in their outcomes, especially in cases where group activities were combined with one-to-one support. The results suggest that community center activities of this nature offer benefits that are generally supportive of health behavior changes. Such initiatives can perform an important role in supporting the health improvement objectives of former healthcare services. So I think Krellin, I do have Ehlers-Danlos. I think a great example of the idea that we could talk about here is like, I will do things like stress and boredom eat. I know that when I eat more, it can sometimes it can cause weight gain, and weight gain that's in excess of what I feel most comfortable with. I have this like range that's where my body sort of feels great. If I go above it or below it, it's not really good. I just don't feel correct in my body. And it's not so much about fat phobia, though I'm not going to say that there is none of that, because there definitely is. But I also have fear of like the extreme opposite of becoming like really thin and emaciated and losing physical strength. I like being really physically strong. Uh, like being able to like bench more than my body weight, for example. But those are my own like internalized biases. But the point is, like, I will do things like stress eat and boredom eat a lot. And a lot of the time, especially the stress and the boredom, I know are both linked to often being chronically understimulated and feeling stressed because I am understimulated, partially because of things like loneliness. The pandemic has really been hard for sort of physical and intellectual stimulation. Not being able to go out and meet people, having a harder time interacting with new ideas, it really being like, I just have to go and like search for new things to decrease the understimulation that I have. Getting overstimulated is like a sensory thing, but understimulation is a much more complicated thing to tackle. And I know that I feel driven to do a lot of snacking because of being chronically understimulated. Because I know that when I'm out and I'm like getting novelty, basically, I don't feel that urge to snack as much. And this is not to say snacking is bad. It's more about like my internal sense of whether this is a healthy relationship I'm having to food or if this is a relationship where I'm using it as a tool or a crutch in a positive way or in a negative way. Like there are definitely times where I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm really stressed out. And I know if I eat some chocolate, it's gonna help me feel better. And I don't have the resources to do the like emotion regulation right now. So I'm gonna outsource it to chocolate. And that gets me what I need. And that's an active choice versus something that can produce all kinds of negative things, including doing things like secret eating. I don't want to talk too much about this because I don't want to get too into eating disorder discussions and like I don't want to do too much analysis of my own eating habits. But secret eating is often a really unhealthy thing. When you're feeling a lot of shame around eating food, regardless if you're eating it for nourishment or for pleasure or because of compulsion, that's really bad. And it's also really correlated to things like social isolation and loneliness and feelings of self hatred. And having more social belonging tends to reduce the likelihood that someone's going to engage in sort of compulsive, secretive eating. Um, so that's a way in which this is legit kind of talking about something. Um, and this goes on to really talk a lot about how having a sense of place both in terms of your relationship to your environment, but also having a sense of place within your community and knowing that you belong and that you're welcome there and having places of like social meaning and creative expression and getting to interact with people. And it doesn't have to be the kinds of interactions where it's like we're going to be best friends forever and text each other 50 times a day and see each other every Sunday for tea. It can just be like, this is a friendship that exists in the context of this community center. Those are perfectly legit friendships. I think we also have this like very single narrative about like a friend is supposed to be like essentially the same thing as a romantic partner minus the romance and the sex, if romance and sex is part of your romantic partnerships. Um, but it's okay to have friends where like this is my friend where we give each other advice. I've had friends in the past where it's like these are my board game friends and I don't actually want to associate with them outside of board gaming time. We actually don't get along outside of board games. Board games, we have like same taste. We like to play board games together. It's enjoyable, but otherwise we don't really interact with each other and there's nothing wrong with that. We would like see each other at board game parties or like board game cafes and we had a good friendship there. They were like always available to play board games with me and my partner, and that was great. So these different types of friendships are completely legit. Um, and so the kinds of social belonging that you can develop, even just in these very specific contexts at a community center, can still have huge, massive benefits. And we have to be careful about the story we tell ourselves about like only one type of friendship is real friendship and is actually meaningful friendship. There's lots of different types. And this article talks a lot about how having different types of activities really reduce people's sense of loneliness, their senses of self-hatred, helped reduce mental health issues, gave people more skills, gave them the opportunity to do things like volunteer work, which also gave them a sense of belonging. So it wasn't just serving the people who were like lonely and needed all of this stuff. It was also serving the people who got to then volunteer there or lead activities or be a part of something. Anyway, this is essentially a weird kind of online community center, I guess, though it's a little one-sided. I mean, very one-sided because it's mostly me talking the whole time. So I think that we can look at this other part here, which is this sort of well-being program that they had developed, and who they focused on and how they focused on helping them. And it was collaboration with other agencies. And this one here, I think, is one of the most important things, a focus on reducing stress and anxiety. This is really, as you can see up here, focused on things like being non-judgmental and non-threatening and very people-centered. So this kind of also goes back to, does the physical environment, does the way your town or city is set up, the things you have access to around where you live, also feel non-judgmental and non-threatening and welcoming? Because that physical level also kind of has to be there. Yeah. Hi, Aradin. So this is a big sort of idea. So then there are lots of other articles that we can talk about. I was thinking of reading this on today's stream about placemaking in the human scale city, but I want to play some Stardew Valley. It's been a little while. So we will look at this one next time. Okay, so I feel lopsided instead of one-sided. Okay, I appreciate that distinction. So then we can go play some Stardew Valley now. I think that'll be really fun. I'm gonna go to gameplay. I gotta still start Stardew Valley, so give me a second. And I'm excited to go back to Castle Farm together and chill out and have some chickens. We have chickens now. It's very exciting. So, human scale communities. All of this sort of combines. We're going to keep talking about this whole idea in the context of Stardew Valley as well, right? Which is like, again, why does Stardew Valley create such a nice sense of place? The game is just taking a minute to start. Yay, it's starting. Why does Stardew Valley feel like home? Why does it actually feel like, oh, this is a place where I can belong? Well, because it does a very good job with this sense of place. It does a very good job of you feeling like I belong here. I'm able to see myself here. I can integrate. I'm being welcomed. I am respected for who I am, even the ways in which I'm different than other people. I have opportunities here. I'm allowed to make my mark on this place. I wish in the late game we've talked about this before, more things happened at the community center, because I think that would really hammer home this idea of the importance of community center. Oh, thank you, Smoky Bus. I'm glad that you like my hat. And you're welcome to stay if you want and chat with us. We're just loading up the game. So yeah, why does Stardew Valley feel like home? How does it create this sense of place, right? I think some of the things it does really well is there's a very strong connection to the changing of seasons. Let's see what the weather is. What's the weather going to be tomorrow? Cloudy with gusts of wind throughout the day. Not rainy. You've never played Stardew Valley, Smoky Bus? Well, I recommend it. Very displeased spirits. Okay, no mines today. No mines. Oh, but I got some mail. I'm excited to see what this is. I'd like to give my cows a special treat. They're such good girls and hungry too. Could you bring me a bunch of amaranth? They love the stuff. Thanks, dear. Marnie. Okay, I can bring you some of that. Yep, it is a Gothy Cowgirl. And you're right, Smoky Bus, it is available on console. It is, I think it's available on most of them. I know it's available on Switch. and like PS something. I don't know what the newest PS is. Hi, puppy. You're walking into the scarecrow. I think I'm currently growing one amaranth right here, this purple guy. That should be enough. Yeah. So then we were talking about sense of place, and one of the things I mentioned earlier was like a sense of a connection to the land, being able to notice changes in it. And so this doesn't just mean like very hardcore naturey land, but it can also mean just like noticing when new things are built or noticing changes or noticing like when the character of a neighborhood is changing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like it's never supposed to change. That's not at all what this whole idea is about, because it's we don't want to be NIMBYs. um, but being able to know where you're living well enough that you can have a connection to it that is meaningful and notice how it changes. I think Stardew Valley does a very good job of this with how it really creates this changing of the seasons, how you are able to experience things like the different festivals. So, really focusing on the seasons and celebrating them, um, and really sort of feeling connected to how things change. There's this weird sort of myth that a lot of Japanese people know, or not know, have, where they think Japan is the only country that has four seasons. It's very mind boggling that they have this idea. Yes, thank you to Chipron for putting the link in the chat. Um, I was always really surprised when my like high school students would be like, "I love Japan because it's the only country that has four seasons," and I'd be like, "What? Where did you get that idea?" Okay, let's talk about this. But one of the things that, if I'm taking a very kind reading of this, yeah, I know it's like an excellent education system and everything, and somehow so many people, including adults, like I had Japanese friends who were living in Boston and still were like, Japan is the only country that has four seasons. I'm like, you live in Boston. You see the four seasons. Boston has very dramatic changes between summer and winter. Like summer is hot and humid and like miserable, and winter is like 10 feet of snow. How do you not? And she was just like, oh yeah, so Japan and Boston four seasons. And I was like, what? What is happening? Okay, anyway. There's been a lot of like blog posts from people who've lived in Japan about why they think there's this myth. And some of it's like looking at history and different things like that, which, could legit be, there could be something for it. But as I was mentioning, if I take a very kind reading of what they might be talking about, my assumption is they're talking about how Japan places a kind of strong emphasis on the changing of seasons with a lot of different like cultural holidays and activities that are only done during certain times of the year. Like everywhere, I mean, this is like generally a true statement about the world, but Japan also does a lot of festivals. And I think that, oh, here's the other chicken. Yes, baby. This is Silly Millie. And where's Krellin is hiding. Krellin chicken is hiding. Anyway, oh yeah, look at all these eggs. I clearly haven't been for a couple days. uh, what did you say, Cotigo? The most satisfying answer to why that myth persists is because that isn't as true around tropical countries, which usually have a wet and a dry season. Yeah, I think that that's legit. But like China definitely has four seasons, and China's right there. One of the oh, that's a good point, Kotigo, that Japanese people often compare the Philippines and Japan. That is true. That is true. Yes. So anyway, I think that this game does a really good job. You can feel very connected to the land, right? You can feel very connected to the changing of seasons. And when we live, oh no, why am I pickaxing these pieces of wood? When we live in a world where like we spend 99% of our time, I mean, remember, don't trust me too hard when it comes to numbers. When we spend a lot of our time indoors, and we tend to only interact with the natural environment around us when we're going in between places, in between, getting to work, getting from work or school or whatever, grocery shopping, we have a not very strong connection to, not as strong, the subtle ways in which things change. So like one of my favorite things here that brings a little bit more of this is I have these bird feeders that are out here, a couple different types to have different types of, attract different types of birds. And the birds that come in the spring are really different than the birds that come in the winter. And I can see very clearly which birds are migratory, which birds are here during certain times of the year, and which ones are here year round. And that gives me a very strong sense of connection to the city very quickly, right? Like, 'cause I already have this idea of this is the reality here. This is the way things are here, and I can know this place in a sort of meaningful sense. I'm gonna keep my hoe with me. I'm gonna go fishing. I need to eat some food because I'm kind of completely out of energy. Let's see. Let's just eat some grapes and some salmon berries. This will hopefully be enough food. We'll see. We'll see. This is enough food. Saving the purple grapes for Vincent because he likes grapes a lot. Hey, Charlie Arvis. Good day. We're talking about how Stardew Valley really connects us to a sense of belonging and a sense of place. Kettlestick, you said, remember the crows used to feed cat treats too? I bet they're so confused now. Yeah, it's true. When I lived in Seattle, there's all these crows that lived around me, and I decided to become friends with them by feeding them cat treats, because crows really like cat treats. And I was very sad when we left, and the day we were moving, we took like a huge chunk of it and just dumped it out where we would meet them to say our goodbyes. I'm sure they understood. They saw us like leaving and everything. Crows are pretty smart, or at least they probably got that we don't live there anymore. Oh, it's Evelyn. I gotta say hi to her. She's so nice. Evelyn, the good mayor put me in charge of the town's public gardens. The fall flowers are delicate, so don't go stomping on them. I know how you kids like to do. See, this is great though, right? Like, she is just a random citizen, and the mayor, like, hopefully it was consensual and didn't just like tell her she had to. But oh yes, a field snack. That's great. Gave her the opportunity to do something that's gonna give her meaning in the city, right? Like, oh gosh, my OBS thing is like bouncing up and down, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, it just triggered my brain to think that the exclamation point went up. So she's got the ability to exert her will on the world, right? Nominally, she'll get to choose what the gardens look like, hopefully, or she'll get to have some influence over that. She is doing meaningful work that everybody benefits from, like having these beautiful public space in the middle of town. Smallmouth bass. And she can get recognition for it. People appreciate it. Hopefully people thank her, and hopefully people comment on how much they like it and offer to help. But that is like a very small thing, but a way that Evelyn is still going to feel like her life matters here and that she's important to her town. I see people writing things in chat. Oh no, I'll check it out after I catch the next fish. And I just spilled my drink all the way down my shirt. Great. I'm really good at messing my mouth when I drink things. Yeah. It's really great when he just pours down and I just like feel it pool under my poop. So good. So good. I'm going to pause and I'm going to get a tissue. Because that is cold. My tea is cold. Okay. All the way just down my shirt. Someday, I will no longer have a drinking problem. And I'll be able to drink drinks like an adult. I need a sippy cup, though. I think that'd be better. One that's hard to spill. Anyway, so like Evelyn gets this sense of belonging here, right? She gets this sense of meaning, even though the community center isn't restored yet. She already has this way in which she's very integrated. Or I think about Emily, right? Emily walks. I like that you can learn people's routines in this game, and they change through the seasons and the days of the week, like when Sebastian goes out to smoke and how long he does, and everything changes. And I guess you could say it feels a little stalkery sometimes because it's knowing so much about other people. But you would have the community culture of like, how involved are we with each other? And you got people like Linus who really want their privacy and they really want to be respected. And I think Linus is an example of like how this town could do better, welcoming him and making him feel welcome and belonging. But this is a very long time since. Did I miss the exclamation point? Because I just feel like, okay, we've just been sitting here forever. All right, let's see what y'all saying in chat. Um, Silly My Lithial, you said, I bet the crows still pick on the people who live there where you used to for not feeding them cat treats. Uh, Charlie Yarvis, you said, I'm plugging away at Stardew Valley and Elden Ring. Oh my goodness, I want to play Elden Ring so bad. My laptop cannot do it, and it is despair. So much despair that I cannot play Elden Ring. But I'm going to build myself a PC. Kettlestick actually gave me really good advice on what PC parts to buy. And I'm going to build a PC. And then I'm going to play so much Elden Ring. Krellin, the crows do know that new people aren't Arya. Crows recognize people. Yeah. And Brontor, I do that all the time too, but because I'm missing a few nerve connections in my chin, yeah, I use straws and things like Turvis tumblers a lot. Yeah, I'm not sure why I constantly spill drinks on myself, but it's a lot. It's like a lot. Cotigo, enjoy some work. I hope you have a good, it's your first day, I know, doing remote work and doing a new job. So good luck. I wish you the best. Uh, And yeah, new PC will be nice. And Krillin said, other than the FOMO of getting to play the latest hot thing, I don't get the drive to play Elden Ring at all. I mean, I like the Souls games. I've been playing them since Demon Souls. It was like one of my favorite video games ever. And that's why I want to play Elden Ring. Because I've just played the crap out of Dark Souls 2. My laptop can't run Dark Souls 3. It also can't run Dark Souls Remastered, unfortunately. So I play a lot of Dark Souls 2, and I've played so much of it. So I'm looking forward to a new thing. Um, and I'm a masochist. I mean, I'm a bit of a sadist and a masochist, but I'm an equal opportunity kinkster. Yes, I will just do that. I will go say hi to Yaz and Jen and Penny. I got her, Penny. Do you know what? I should take the children on a field trip sometime, maybe to the forest. Yeah. A guest speaker would be nice, maybe someone familiar with nature. That would be nice. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. See, this is the thing. Penny could then influence what happens in the library and guest speakers, and she could find people and like help invite them. Yaz is just like dot dot dot. Who are you, weird adult who wants to talk to me that I don't know? Oh my goodness, look at the little skeleton just hanging out in the window. It's so cute. Yes. Okay, I really like the subtle touches that this game has. Where you can see the different people in the town's personality. Let's do some foraging. I got a common mushroom. You can see their personality, you can get to know them. And I think that overall, the community is not perfect, right? They don't like totally welcome and accept Linus. And I think that the wizard is probably not totally welcome and accepted, but they're not being run out of the town. And I think that over time, as you play the game, you can see that the acceptance builds and people are kinder. And I think the wizard likes being weird and aloof. There's a mod that allows you to date the wizard, and sometimes I'm tempted to do that. Weird and aloof is kind of my thing. Sometimes, but then also like really weird when you get to know them and you get to know them and they're total spaz and like chaotic. It's great. Which I feel like the wizard would be. But yeah. Okay, we got two golden or two common mushrooms and one gold star common mushroom. Not bad. Not bad. I do love some mushrooms. Brontor, you say Elden Ring looks interesting because it seems like there's a lot to explore, and I really like that sort of experience. Yeah, and I would say that that's also that if we're to take a very large definition of a sense of place, a lot of these games do a good job with that by making you feel like I have the ability to go explore this vast world and then feel connected to it. Like I think Skyrim does a good job of like as you transit through different biomes and the weather changes and the music changes and that builds a very like clear sort of narrative sense of this is the landscape and you can have this sense of like this is the cold place and this is the dungeon and this is the field and I think it does a pretty good job. Uh, Silly Melithu said, not to suggest you need thinking, but I have heard that people with sensory issues, particularly overstimulation, who have problems like missing their mouth, etc., can have pretty good success with compression garments. Not sure if you ever tried that. It works with the proprioception in the body to give you better feedback about where your body is, like under armor. Yeah, generally speaking, I have pretty good proprioception, except with drinking things. And I think a lot of the time it comes down to doing it while I'm very distracted and talking. Um, and I think the other thing is that I'm a small person. I'm a small and things are kind of designed mostly for average height. So I think a lot of the time this is wider. I don't know. This is my conjecture. But I have tried compression garments before and they're nice. They're nice. Detuber News said there are so many mods for this game. I haven't looked into whether I can install them on Mac or not. And Aradney said personally, I can't stand the Souls games, so I have no desire there. Although I wish I could play Forbidden West. Yeah, Souls games are really take them or leave them for most. Like I think it tends to be either you really like them or you really don't like them. And if you're people like my friend Kettlestick, you tolerate them because I like them so much and we play together. Leah says, I fall asleep to the soothing sound of water every night. That's so nice. See, that would also be a good thing. It's like you connect to the physical landscape and have this relationship with it, right? You fall asleep to the sound of water. Or when I lived in this city called Quincy for a little while as a kid, we lived literally right next to the red line. So it would go past and it would actually like kind of, oh yes, Emily's in the graveyard at night. Time to go talk to her. We would actually like rattle the building and stuff. And at first, it really was annoying and would wake me up. Emily says, I can't wait to see some pumpkins this year. The Spirits Eve festival happens at the end of the season. It's pretty low key compared to what you'd see in Zuzu City, but for a small town like this, it's a lot of fun. Nice. Um, I don't think I can do any of these quests. They're gonna be too much. Okay. Okay, a lot of albacore and 80 hardwood. Hmm. I can't do the 80 hardwood yet, but I could probably do a lot of ocean fishing. I'm pretty sure albacore is in the ocean. Ditcherbron, do you know? I'm going to accept this. I probably should have accepted it tomorrow morning rather than at 9:40 at night, but I think the albacore is in the ocean and that you do it at night fishing mostly. Mostly? I don't remember. Um, oh yes, Willie, you're here. Hello. Some fish come and go with the seasons. Other only come out at night or in the rain. Yeah. Yeah. Mm, don't miss, don't miss. Come on, fishy. Come on, fishy. Anchovy. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Lithial. Albacore are big mercury accumulators. So we're just going to take care of our family, our fish family, and not pollute the water so much. And then they will take care of us by nourishing us and the water and other life. And it's great. Oh my goodness. Yes. Anchovy. Albacore is in the ocean. Thank you so much to Chevron. Haradin, you said, I guess it is more their legacy in popularizing the whole difficult equals good mentality than the games themselves. Oh, I see. I missed some statements. Sorry, I can't look at it right now. I'm trying to catch this fish. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Come on. Yes. Anchovy. Oh, only found around 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the fall. So I'll have to come back tomorrow morning. Okay, well, let's head home. Get a good night's sleep, charge up, and we'll come fishing. Yeah, man, I still have that ghost song stuck in my head. It's like still going on in the background. I've listened to it so many times this week. I really don't want to end up disliking it because I listened to it too much, but it's rough. It's rough. It's such a good song. Yeah. Okay. I got 3 anchovies though. I can't wait to build up a kitchen so I can cook things in this game. It's so much fun. I one time I made eggplant parmesan just because of this game. And I think I've told you all this before. It was delicious. And I will never make it again because it's too much work. And I've been trying to go through all of the different things you can cook in this game and make them IRL, and it's been pretty fun. No, I want to go to my mostly forageables chest. I'm going to put those mushrooms in there. And we're going to get out. Nope. We're going to get, where's my watering can? Here it is. Okay. And then we're going to go to bed. Yes. Um, so yeah, Souls games, they're very much for some people who really like them and some people who don't. And I think that's okay. I don't think games have to be hard to be good. Uh, I don't think it's wrong to want games to be easy. I don't think it's wrong to want to just have fun with a game rather than like struggle. And I personally like the Souls games and how like I feel myself get better at them as I play them. And I feel myself like very happy spirit. So it'll be a good day for fishing. Clear and sunny all day tomorrow. Okay. So yeah, I think that the Souls games are fine. They're fine. Oh my goodness. Totally wasted that water. Well, wasted the energy of the pour. Oh man, my bok choy is getting ready to be harvested. This is exciting. All right, let's go over here. Oh yes, and my jam is ready. That's gonna be nice money because it's melon jam. Very exciting. Thank you for that tip to Chipron. It's made a big difference. Like really, it's made me some of the most money. And I get a pet. Oh, my scarecrow has scared off 14 crows. That's so nice. I got to pet the chickens. It's really easy to forget to do things like this. There's a lot to remember to do in this game. But I have to be really careful because I want to go ocean fishing. I'm just going to go. I'm going to go fishing now, and then I'll finish watering when we get back. Because if I want to catch this albacore, I got to get there. Got to get there early. Yes. Yeah, Kettlestick. I never feel myself get better at souls. I only feel like I get better at particular bosses. It's like you can have a PhD in each boss. Yeah, I would definitely say that's true. I mean, it depends, I think, on which Souls game you're playing as well, because I think Dark Souls 2, the whole thing is just like level up ADP and roll. Level up ADP and roll. Get good at dodging. Parrying is important. Um, yeah. Okay. Okay. I gotta fish. Gotta fish. I'm gonna try to drink and not spill drink on myself. I see the bubbles. I see the bubbles. Oh my goodness. Sardine. No, I'm gonna go to the bubbles. I'm gonna go to the bubbles. Bubble time. Let's do it. Missed the bubbles. Overshot them. Yeah. So some of the other things I think is that this game does that helps it feel like home is like you've got this strong sense of the passing of seasons. You've got this connection. You can see how other people's lives also really fit into this place. Like I think with Evelyn, Emily, and all of them, like you. Oh my gosh, I definitely overshot it again. All right, I'm gonna try one more time. Yoop. Oh, undershot this time. Yeah. Oh, I did it. Yes. Okay. I think that it does a really good job of see how people fit into the community. You see how you fit into it. You can get to know people. You can see the sort of rhythm of the day and the rhythm of other people's lives. And you can see that to a certain extent in most cities and towns, but it's harder to feel like you're also sort of embedded in this. Um, oh man, I keep getting nothing. All right, all right. Yes, hit. Okay. No, no, no. Am I gonna get it? Anchovy. Anchovy. I need. Oh, kettle stick, you're right. The rod might be preventing me from catching certain fish. Plus, it's after 11, so I probably can't catch any more albacore. It is the training rod because I am terrible at this fishing mini game, even though I like it a lot. And the first few times I was like, ooh, sea cucumber. Totally blaming my mouse. Oh, the wiki confirms the training rod cannot catch albacore. Welp, time to come back tomorrow. All right, I'm gonna fish some more because I'm enjoying it, and then I'll go home and I'll water the plants and pet the chickens. Oh my goodness. No, no, no. Oh goodness. No, no. I was so close to catching it, and it's like almost back to the bottom now. No, 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 no. Okay. Okay, fish. Ah, yes. Okay. Sardine. More bubbles. Nice. Well, hopefully this will level me up in fishing, so then tomorrow when I come out, it'll be a little easier. And I'll have to use something that's not the training rod, unfortunately. Unfortunately, because I'm bad at using anything but the training rod. Oh, okay. 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., so I can come back in the evening. That's good to know. That's good to know. Maybe I'll just do that. Maybe I'll just do that. Thank you so much for looking all of this up, Kettlestick and Ditchibron. Very, very helpful. All right. So then other ways in which I think that this game does a good job of having a sense of place is that like you get to make suggestions to people as well over time about how they can also interact with their belonging. But they're not just like random nonsense, uninvited advice. You get to have like a conversation with people. Like later with Leah, if you get close enough with her, she'll make this art and she'll make some art about how she feels about you, and that's really like nice in the sense of belonging there. And then you talk about like what kind of art show she should have and if she should have one, or like at some point you can help people upgrade their houses, or you get to be involved in Robin's projects. Like Robin wants to build something new and she needs you to bring her some hardwood. And so, and you've got this community board where people can ask for things, both this bigger one and then the one outside of Pierre's. And I think that is really a great way to have this idea, because it's like sometimes the requests are weird and like random and they need it today, and but it doesn't seem like there's like that's being shamed, because remember this like sense of place and belonging needed to include this sense of non-judgment. And I think Linus doesn't totally have that, but your relationship with Linus can eventually help Linus have that, especially if you choose. You'll get these different dialogue options in this one part, and so this is spoilers. If you don't want to listen, I'm gonna put my hands up like this while I tell you the spoilers, and then I'll put them down when I'm done. Linus, you could have this quest line with him, or this like, I guess not quest line, where you talk to him about the different ways that he's living. Someone wants to offer him to come stay someplace, or you have the opportunity to suggest he goes live someplace and stays with you. I forget which one it is. And then you get to decide whether or not you're going to respect his way of living or not. And by respecting that he wants to live outside and wants to live the way he does, it really helps facilitate his sense of belonging. Okay, end of spoiler. So Leah says, there's actually a lot of wild food in this area if you know where to look. I've been having fresh salads almost every day. Nice. Yeah, Leah likes salad. It's one of her friendship gifts. Oh yeah, Evelyn. I already talked to you this week, but Bird. Let's talk to the mayor. Let's say hi to Lewis. The saloon gets pretty lively at night. I like to visit once a week or so to catch up on things. So yeah, you get to be part of people's projects. You get to interact with their needs. You get to make choices about things in ways that actually influence other people's lives, and in mostly positive ways. I mean, I think in the game there is some care that needs to be taken to make sure that you're like respecting people and not just steamrolling them. But there's all of this opportunity for belonging here. I'm just gonna water my crops with salt water. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, worms. Were there worms? Did I miss some worms? Let me go look. You're right. Thank you, silly Millie. Oops. Oops. Clay. Yay. So then I think that it also helps feel like home because, as we've mentioned last week, it's also human scale, right? Like you can walk from one end of the community to the other in like an hour or so in game time, right? You've got the opportunity to really interact with a lot of different people in any given day. You've got the ability to be in a lot of different spaces. Sometimes when I'm saying things, I like in the middle lose track of what I'm trying to say, especially on days when I'm tired. Oh man, I need to eat so much food every day. Every day. Just relentless how much food you need to eat. I'm facing the wrong direction, and I think I'm watering things that have already been watered. Oof. So, different note. I recently watched the new Dune movie. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to give any spoilers or anything. I just want to say it's very pretty. I watched it after I had an endoscopy, and I was still kind of high from the effects of the anesthesia, and so it was really great because then I was just like vibing the whole time, which is always nice when you just kind of like chill out. Um, Krellin, it's true though. It is so unreasonable that we have to eat every single day who designed the system. Yeah, there are a lot of times where I just am not in the mood to eat things. And not out of any like disorder kind of thing. It's just sometimes feels troublesome to have to eat so much every day. Sometimes I just want to chill and not have to. I mean, like I like food, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I don't want to have to eat every day. Does this make sense? Probably not. It probably sounds really weird. I'm going to sell these fish, get a little extra money. Probably could have put those fish in the community center. I don't know. Yeah, silly Millie, how often the end of my sentence and the beginning of my sentence don't recognize one another is, well, let's just say too often. It's absolutely true. Yes, I don't know if it's true for you, but oh yeah, I'll fill the dog's water dish on the way home. I gotta catch some albacore, and I only got a little bit of time. Yes. I don't know why. Every time I'm sitting here and talking to all of you, my nose and sinuses get like really dried out. Oh, right. Oh no, I forgot to bring my other rod. Oh my goodness, what have I done? Okay, I gotta run home. I gotta go. Oh no. Oh no. I'm probably not gonna complete this quest. How many fish do I need to catch? Okay, only 10. I still have a couple of days. Oh, hey, Elliot. Oh dear, a tiny crab appears to have made his home in my shirt pocket. That's the trouble with living on the beach. I mean, that's kind of cute. Um, yeah, every time I sit here, my nose just gets really dry and I feel like it gets like swollen, it gets irritated. I don't know why. Maybe I should put a little humidifier on. But it's only during the streams. Maybe it's just because I'm talking so much. Yeah, Aradin, I'm also definitely an eat to live rather than a live to eat kind of person. I sometimes envy people who are very live to eat because I would love to be able to get that much pleasure from food, but it's just never that like I like it and I definitely can get pleasure from food, but it's never like, whoa, yeah, food. It's always just kind of like, okay, yeah, sure. I can eat. I will do that. Um, I'm gonna put water in the dog's dish and hopefully I'm not allergic to you, Rodden. I think it's just talking so much. I should probably I have a little like tabletop diffuser humidifier thing, and I should probably bust that out so that I can, next time, so I don't get so dry. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I just stop walking. In the middle of walking, just stops. Just stops. So, what else do people think? I've shared a lot of my ideas, but oh, and I forgot to tell you about Dune. I will come back to that in a minute. Uh, what else do people think helps make it so that Stardew Valley feels so much like home to people? Why does this feel like so attractive? And what is it that people want from this? Okay, so Dune. I love the original Dune movie, the David Lynch one. It's weird and spectacular, and that had always kind of made me want to read the books. And the books had always been on my to read list, and I never got around to doing it because there's just so many books in the world to read. It always makes me sad about how many good books there are and how few books I will probably ever get to read in my lifetime. But anyway, I watched the new movie recently and I really dug it. Like, really dug it. It was very pretty. It was from what my partner said, because he's read the books multiple times and really likes them, that they were very, like, it was a very faithful recreation of the story. And his complaint was that, like, nothing surprised him or it was like, knew about it, but for me, I was like, oh wow, this is cool. This is like way better than the not way better. It's very different than the first movie or the original movie, but it really made me want to read the books more. So I'm going to meet somebody today. I'm going to get a little train ride to go to the other side of the city to meet someone who's selling all three of the books for like $10, which is very exciting. They're nice, like well used copies too. I really like well loved books. Um, and I'm going to get them and I'm going to read them. And I'm very excited because I'm finally getting around to reading something I've been meaning to read for a long time. Um, the vibe was just good in the movie. Made me want to read them. Yes, that's my thought about Dune. So, oh wow, this is a very energetic fish. Never was gonna catch that. And I got about one fish worth of energy left. Yeah, the books that I have on my like, I actually really need to read this list is Dune, the culture books, which is I think Ian M. Banks, and then The Foundation. I've read a lot of other things by Asimov, um, but not that. And it's something I've been meaning to read for a long time. Okay, let's eat this seaweed and then fish a little more. I probably am too low level at fishing to catch albacore, let's be honest. Um, yeah, I love sci-fi very, very much. It's been nice reading a lot of it. Um, I see people talking about whether or not, or Krellin, you're talking about how Frank Herbert, Schubert, I never know how to say his last name, uh, felt about the David Lynch film. I mean, like, I love David Lynch. Stuff's great. Big Lynch fan. Um, okay, I should go home. It's midnight. After midnight. We'll see if I make it home in time. Did not catch any albacore. Probably gonna fail this little quest. Kind of hard to do, especially when you're not very good at fishing. It's rough. And when you walk into things all the time and it stops you from moving. Or when your keyboard just doesn't continue to push you forward. Um, but yeah, so what do people think? What are the ways in which we develop a sense of belonging and a sense of place? Um, like, how do you get your sense of your place in the world, especially a positive sense of place? And how does Stardew Valley help with this? I really am interested in what other people have to say about this too, not just me. Okay. Um, okay, Detuborn, you said, oh, Kettlestick, you said the problem with being a live to eat person is that you wind up overeating and being more obsessed with food in a way that doesn't feel healthy. Yeah, I think it's always about balance, right? Like, it's okay to have pleasure from food. It's okay to, like, as I mentioned earlier, eat when you're like, I need to outsource my emotional regulation to food right now because I don't have the resources or tools. But I don't like it when it feels very outside of my control, or if I'm doing it because there's something really else that needs to be taken care of in my life, like being really understimulated or having a lot of stress that I'm not attending to, or being really lonely. And so I think it's important to have a real good balance there. But I also kind of find eating frustrating and troublesome. Like, I wish I just didn't have to do it. I've had many periods of time in my life where I would only eat like protein bars and stuff because I was like, I can't be bothered. It's too much trouble. Detimberon, you said another wiki tip about albacore prefers temperature edges where cool and warm water meet. So I guess like not too far out. So maybe I should go to the edge of the dock, like the sides rather than the like out further into the ocean. Silly My Lithia, you said, huh, the original movie was not very book-like, if I recall. And Krellin Frank Herbert liked the David Lynch film, and it was only released the only released one he was alive to approve. Silly My Litfield, it's been a very long time since I read Dune. Krellin, David Lynch did nothing to the legacy of Dune that Herbert had not already done himself. Um, Silly My Litfield, for me, it's really hard to say because SDV doesn't really give me that sense of place. I always feel very alienated there. I think that that's also interesting though, because we could talk about what is it about it that makes you feel alienated, and the architecture and the layout and the ability to access services, to connect with people, etc. The Chirburn, you said you've covered a lot of it today, re sense of place, feeling like you can have influence over the place and make it better for others as well. Silly My so this is why I end up not playing. I always feel like an outsider. I never manage to feel like I belong, even when I've lasted 3 to 4 years in the game. Oh yeah, Stardew Valley. SDV, I thought that was like a city. I think you're just using the like airport code. um, yes. I would be interested to find out what it is about Stardew Valley that makes you feel alienated. Did you run the interaction with others and collaboration to make it better really helps me? And Aradin, you said, I have found myself that making eating part of my daily routine, and that makes it easier. Yeah, I try to make it part of my daily routine as well, but it's not always easy to do. Yeah. I wish I could play music on stream. Oh, cowpoke, I've made 50,000. Spent all of it. Because then we could talk a lot about, or if we could play music on stream, we could talk about music. It'd be fun. Krellin, I think that eating at set times a day every day is actually like considered to be one of the healthiest ways to do it. Going straight to fishing. That's what we're doing. I don't have full energy. How is that even possible? Um, because if you know what time of day you're going to eat and you plan out what you're going to eat at that time, it's better. I have the problem of like being like, well, I'm not hungry and it's 2, so I'm just going to wait. And then it'll be like 4 or 3:34 and I'll be like, whoa, I'm like really hungry. And I've waited too long and then I'll just eat literally what's ever in front of me, which is often not very good. I sometimes don't even like cook the food. I'm just like going to eat some spoonfuls of peanut butter or something because I waited too long. Oh, yes, field snack. And it's rough because actually eating at set meal times and planning out what you're going to eat gives you a lot more like agency in your relationship with food. And then you don't have to like make that decision while you're hungry, which I think is really nice. Um, let's try to fish here. Let's see if we get some albacore here. All right. The chest is tempting, but the fish is more important. It does not look like albacore. Maybe getting too deep in the water already. Let's go over and get into this middle blue. Because that might be the intermediary zone. Aradin, you ask, do I ever feel like I'm depriving Linus of stuff when I take things from the trash can? I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, maybe. Uh, maybe. Krellin, you said you're actually hungry right now, but it's not your mealtime for another 10 minutes. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that it's tough not to just like wait and wait until you're really hungry to start thinking about food. And I definitely think that sometimes there can be other anchovy, what? Issues involved where like I think a lot of us there's a lot of fetishization in the world of like having a ton of self-control and like being your own master and self-mastery and just all of these ideas. And I think that those things can be good. Oh, try fishing where the river meets the ocean. Okay, let's do that. Like right here? Yeah. And I think that sometimes I have personally experienced, and I've talked to people who've thought this way, where like waiting to eat or not eating because you're like, well, I'm just not hungry, even though you will get hungry later. And then you end up making sometimes like less pleasurable and less nutritious food choices. Ends up being this sort of thing of like, well, what is this? Tilapia? That's cool. Kind of being like this sort of vicious cycle because it's like this idea of like, well, I have control over myself. Look at, I'm not just like addicted to food and stuff. But I think it ends up being this really unhealthy and unsustainable kind of mentality. Um, but maybe it works for some people. I just feel like people sometimes like, I'm not going to eat because it's self control. Um, yeah. Oh, that looks like an albacore. Yes, Stitcher Brown, thank you for the advice. This is so good. I got an albacore. I got one. 9 more to go. Let's see if we can do it. Only 20 more minutes, I think, until the fishing time for albacore is kind of over, but then I'll come back. The albacore was difficult to catch, though. That is true. So we'll see. Sardine. Hello, Elliot. All right, I feel like you said something interesting, Selima, I feel. The social interaction based on giving people things, if I understand it. It doesn't feel like social interaction to me. It feels like bribery. I don't think it models social interaction the way I look for it or want it, maybe. I want to hang out with people, to do things with people. Yes, I definitely agree. Um, I would say that it's okay to do things like a lot of gift giving, though I have talked many times in the past about how gift giving can be its own kind of manipulation or its own kind of problem, and it can be coercive. Like when I'm a goth teenager and my dad gives me Banana Republic gift certificates, and it's like, well, okay, that's like its own kind of, I'm sending you a message about what I expect and want from you, and like whatever. I don't think he meant anything negative by it, but it definitely irked me as a teenager. Or, but that's kind of like giving someone a gift that they don't like. And gifts can be all kinds of problematic, and they can come with stipulations and expectations and stuff. But I think that the one part of it that's good is that you have to get to know the people and get to know their personalities. Like I really like that Haley is the one person who doesn't like prismatic shards because she doesn't like things that are prettier than her. And while that seems, and in some ways is really shallow, I think it's still interesting. It's like very character building. And I also think that it's tough in an indie game to sort of build in other types of interactions. So I think you get some of that um, after you get close to people. You get like these vignettes of hangouts. Like you just like sit there with Sebastian while he like does work and you chat with him a little bit, or while he works on his motorcycle or whatever. Or you get invited to just kind of like spend some quiet time with somebody. And I think that's really nice. Um, yes. Sherburne, you put in here 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the fall, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the winter, or 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. to, yeah, okay. So fishing of albacore is over. So I should go home because I gotta do stuff. I am kind of tempted to go to the bathhouse, but I feel like that would just take so much time, and I can just eat some food and it'll be fine. Maybe I'll go to the bathhouse after I finish watering the crops. We will see. Um, yeah, we're on tour the whole like writing interactions and then you need to translate them into different languages and everything that goes into that. It's very expensive, it's true, and it's very time consuming. And a lot of people who are good at, say, making a video game are not necessarily good at like dialogue writing. Dialogue writing that feels natural and emotive and not stiff or contrived is very difficult. I think I actually need a wild plum for the community center, so I'm gonna. I see, Superman, you're not 100% sure. I can get it right in the fall. That's totally fair. No pressure. Um, you've all already helped me so much with this game. Um, yes, I do need the wild plum for the community center, so I'm gonna save that. Um, but I think that it does feel alienating in the sense that it is very transactional. And I definitely can agree with that sentiment that like it's not the same as just like building a relationship with someone or getting to know them like sort of the quiet moments of life and everything. Okay. I gotta get my scythe out because nope. No, I don't want to eat the blackberry. I want to get my scythe because the wheat is ready to be harvested. Woohoo! I can tell that my partner is home because I can hear my cat screaming for dinner time all the way over here. I must have not watered that one day. That's a bummer. Um, so yeah, I think that it does feel very transactional and it feels like it's kind of one-sided a lot of the time because you give a lot of gifts, but you don't necessarily get a lot of gifts. And it's not to say I think that it has to be even all the time. Like, if I have a lot more money than a friend, I might be really interested in giving them gifts if they're comfortable with it, but not expect gifts in return. And would not want them to give me lots of gifts in return because I don't want them to spend more money than they have. And as long as they're comfortable with the dynamic, then it's fine. But I think that, yeah, there are problems to being really transactional. Um, and I could see someone who maybe has experienced a lot of like feeling pressured to give gifts or pressured to perform in certain ways for people, not liking this element of the game system and feeling like it's alienating. And I think that, there's all kinds of different ideas in it. There's like, you know, the cultural pressures on people raised female to like pay really subtle attention and to be the ones like buy all the gifts. But then there's also the cultural pressure on people raised as male to sort of be breadwinners and providers in these certain ways. And I think that gift giving is kind of in the crosshair of both of these. Um, and I think that that can be frustrating too, especially if it's not sort of well integrated into other social or cultural uh, rituals. And the aim in this game sometimes with watering plants is frustrating because you're like, yeah, I got it, and then you're like, nope, don't got it. It's completely in a different direction. Welp. Added 15 pieces of hay to the silo. Nice. Do I need bok choy? No. Do not need bok choy for the community center. I'm gonna put that in there. I'm gonna sell this wheat. And I'm gonna put the rest of this in the chest for later. Um, we will see. We will see. I'm gonna fill up my watering can again. And this will be, I think, my last day. Um, let's see. What else can I do? I'm gonna go try to get some more fishies at the ocean. And we'll see how this works. We'll see if I can get any more albacore. Could I fish for albacore here, I wonder? That's an interesting question. Let's find out. Let's give it a shot. Krellin, you're right. You are the wealthy landowner in Stardew Valley. So you should be the one giving gifts. It's true. So I see, I'm going to pause this for a second, or when I can. Silly Malithla, you said, I'm not saying they should have done it differently. I'm just trying to explain that it doesn't work for me. Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying like your opinion is good or bad. Just talking about it. Um, okay. So I got a sea cucumber here. So this is definitely ocean. So I can definitely catch ocean things here. So maybe I can get albacore here. If I can get albacore here, that would be amazing. It's kind of feeling like an albacore. Oh gosh, that was so close yet so far away. Yes, it is albacore. Look at that. Yes. Salima Lithili, you said, I tend to think of it as a love language. I just don't think gift giving is one of my natural love languages. It is a thing I do when I know it is someone else's love language, but that is a level of attention that I don't necessarily want to give every character in a game. Yeah, I mean, for sure, that makes a lot of sense. And the love languages analogy, I have a lot of feelings about love languages. Mostly, I think they're like a net positive, though I think a lot of times people, nobody read the book, really, because if I think if more people read the book, they wouldn't be so excited about the ideas because the guy is like very, very conservative and very, very Christian, and it's very much written from a Christian perspective. Though it may sound surprising, I really did like his book, Covenant Marriage, which is this like special type of legal marriage you can get in some places where you're like legally not allowed to get divorced and stuff. It's very religious marriage because he had a lot of good advice about like how to make relationships work, especially when you know you're going to be in it together for the long haul. And talked a lot about like the regard that you have for your partner and how important that is, and like be careful of the way you talk to yourself about them, um, and be careful of like certain types of cognitive distortion words and stuff. And I think it had a lot of good advice, even if the context is something that's really strange to me. Um, So, it is very convenient to have an ocean in my backyard instead of having to walk all the way to across town to the beach. It would have been nice if I figured this out sooner. But when I say nobody read the book, I mean, like, I think a lot of people didn't read it because they didn't pick up on these things. And one of the things that I think people missed is the main idea of love languages was not about knowing like what your love language is. It was more about recognizing the needs of your partner. It was very much focused on that one direction of being like, this is what will communicate to my partner. So my partner's telling to me that they don't feel very loved or they don't feel very appreciated. And by better understanding what's going to communicate to them that will make them feel loved and appreciated, I can deepen my relationship with them. And it was kind of like, yes, you can also do it the other way around, but the way I've seen a lot of people talk about love languages is very much like, here's what I like. And that's kind of not the point the guy was trying to make. He was trying to say it's a lot more about a manner of paying attention to your partner. And I'm not saying, silly Mother, that you've misunderstood this or anything. I'm just going on a tangent because it's one of those things. Oh my goodness, this is definitely an albacore and definitely a difficult, or at least I think it's an albacore. Oh my goodness, I keep getting so close and then so far away. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Ooh. Yes, it is an albacore. Oh, and I got two magma geodes. Nice. Um, and I think that this game definitely includes some of that in the sense of like you have to know what kinds of gifts people like. Anyway, totally a tangent. Um, so maybe I will be able to catch enough albacore by the end of the quest. We'll have to see. I'll have to remember next week that this is what I was doing. I should though. I should remember. Um, and how many more do I need? Well, I've only got three. I was like, I definitely thought I had got more than that, but it's fine. Um, Aaron, hello. I don't want to become famous. It's fine. I don't want to be famous. Doesn't sound very fun. Man, there's a lot of trash in my backyard. Yeah, I would say that you still have some measure of choice in this game because you don't actually have to become friends with everybody. Just like you don't have to get married and have kids. Thank you, Barontor, for banning the bot, the spam bot. Um, and it's one of those things where there's definitely pressure, where there's definitely this kind of like, since you can see the ranking of all the hearts, there's kind of this implication that you will do this and you will be like monitoring how close you've become with different people and you'll be aiming to increase it. And there's like achievements for getting certain heart levels with certain numbers of people and everything. So there is that. You can still choose to not do it, but when the game is giving you such a strong signal that that's the expectation, yeah. Um, and I think that it's fun to have this discussion about like, oh yeah, I could eat some anchovies for energy, but it is 1 a.m. And even though I could run to my bed at the last moment, I would like to stop here. Um, yeah, silly mouth, like let day one meet everyone. Yeah. And I think that that's feeling a sense of place, like feeling the sense of where you belong in a space, doesn't necessarily have to include everybody knows everything about each other because that can be rough. Some people like that, but like I don't necessarily want to know everything about everyone, and I don't want everyone to know everything about me, despite what it may seem like because of how much I share on the internet. Um, I'm still a pretty private person. Uh, that might seem like a lie given how much I share on the internet, but it's true. But I think that I agree, Krellin. It does feel like can feel like the point of the game, yeah, because it's so sort of implied, and there's like just the heart point system definitely creates that pressure and that sort of like, yeah, yeah, and I think that that is a shortcoming of the game. All right, let's stop here for today. It has been lovely hanging out with all of you so much. If you are not following us yet, please consider giving us a follow. I took down my last stream because I may or may not have accidentally shown everybody where I live. If you were paying really careful attention when I was looking on Google Maps. So I took it down because I'm going to edit that part out and then re-upload it. And so if you want to see last stream, you got to wait a little bit because I haven't had time to get around to editing that little portion out. But yes, thank you all for hanging out with me. Uh, yeah, please do not dox myself. Yep, it was something where I realized it right as it happened, and I was like, good job, me. Uh, luckily, there are like several pins on the map that were labeled home because I've lived several places in this city. So, and I never take off the old ones. But anyway, I took it down so I could edit that part out because I was like, yes, I should have opened like an incognito window and gone to Google Maps so it wouldn't have had my login stuff. That would have been smarter. That's what I'll do next time. Anyway, it was really lovely to hang out. It was really lovely to chat. Thank you all for sharing your opinions on things. Like, it's totally cool if we disagree. And I definitely want to stress that even if I'm doing like an responding to something you've said and it seems like I'm contradicting you, it's not a judgment. Just chatting. Just kind of thinking through it and investigating it. And I generally like when you all, or genuinely like when you all share your thoughts. I will talk to you all this Sunday. I will be streaming at the usual time of 10 a.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Central European time. Nominally, I'm talking with Dr. Elmira, and we're going to be talking about consent in fan fiction, and especially the dubious consent community, as long as she doesn't actually have COVID. She posted today on Twitter that she wasn't feeling very well. She had Schrodinger's sore throat. So as long as she canceled her stream for today, so we may end up needing to reschedule, and it'll probably then just be me and my co-director chit-chatting. But yes, it'll be lovely to hang out with you all as well. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.